Let the egg hunt begin!
Yes, let's begin indeed. Hey everyone, my name is Brian Ward, and with me as always is my fantastic co-host, Dr. Andrea Letamendi. Andrea, how are you this week?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Excellent. Once again, you've had yourself a productive week of podcasts. Besides this one, where else can you be heard?
This is true. I am on a podcast called Vodka OClock this week. You can find the podcast episode at amberunmasked.com. Amber is the host of the podcast Vodka OClock, and she asked me a number of interesting questions about multiple identities, psychology of fictional comic characters, female characters in comic books, and of course, my favorite topic, the Bat universe.
Excellent.
You can also find Amber's podcast on iTunes if you search Vodka OClock. And as the name implies, actually, her podcasts are listed as explicit and are probably recommended only for 18 and older listeners. Just a BTW there.
Good disclaimer.
No.
You know what that means. Time for a little nerd rage.
Oh no. What happened? Wait, that signals nerd rage?
It does now. That's our new signal for actually anything, really.
I like it.
Rage, disappointment.
No.
It all applies. Yeah.
That sounds bad.
Yeah. So we got an email this week. Overall, it was a very positive email in tone, so I'm not going to name its sender because it's clear they're nice folk. But their email reads, "I have just begun to listen to the ARKHAM Sessions, and I love it." Thank you.
Woohoo!
Yeah, this part I like.
Wait, how can this go wrong? This actually sounds good.
As a major Bat fan, I would like to offer a couple of possibly helpful things. First, in your fourth episode, you and your co-host seem to make the common error of confusing two Joker weapons, laughing gas and Joker Venom. Both are gaseous and cause uncontrolled laughing. The laughing gas is not traditional nitrous oxide, but it is used as a means of mass incapacitation. Death may or may not occur. Joker Venom is a binary compound, as you will see in later episodes. It is far more targeted and is intentionally lethal. One fan theory is that the Joker is the only character who realizes that he is fictional. He has often mentioned non-canonical events. Non-canonical events that other characters cannot remember. I look forward to your work on Harley Quinn.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
before we delve into the non-canonical perspective of the Joker, what's up with the Venom and the poison?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, for starters, I would like to say that I too am anxiously awaiting our work with Harley Quinn.
Me too.
I think those conversations will be very entertaining. The remainder of his email, I don't mind being wrong, and I don't mind being corrected. In fact, I welcome it if I'm wrong. The problem is this. This person has made the common error of mistakenly thinking Joker Venom and laughing gas are two separate things. While it's true that the Joker has used both aerosol and liquid weapons, and some of them are fatal while others simply throw the victim into insanity, my understanding of these weapons over the years of reading comics and watching these animated series and movies is that they were simply different names for the exact same thing. Different delivery methods,
right.
Yes. Yeah. Different potency, yes. But the Joker Venom is the exact same thing chemically as laughing gas. And by the way, let me make clear that I'm not talking about nitrous oxide.
Right.
But that it's called something different, usually based on the writer of whatever comic, whatever medium. This email actually got me to thinking, though, that maybe my understanding of this weapon was wrong. Maybe they were two different things. Let me read from the Batman wiki on Joker Venom. It says, in quotes, Joker Venom has had a variety of names depending on the writer. They include Smilex with an I, Smilex with a Y, laughing gas, Joker gas, happy gas, giggle gas, Joker juice, laughing toxin, laugh-a-loads, perma-smile.
Joker juice.
Joker juice.
I don't think anyone should ever say Joker juice.
I don't know if that's true. I'm looking forward to hearing that down the road. Laughing toxin, laugh-a-loads, perma-smile, smiley gas, and Joker toxin. By the way, this was also confirmed at the DC Wiki. And in neither place do they talk about the two toxins being different chemically, so I'm going to go with that. And if it changes sometime in the future episodes, that's fine. If Batman tells us, this isn't just laughing gas, this is Joker venom, I might be willing to change my mind.
No, I mean, you have a great point. I would actually, my position on this is, I don't know that it matters so much if whether we understand the minor discrepancies in something like this kind of weapon. I think it's important as we talk about some of the motivations and of course some of the violence and criminality of these villains. It's important to know, like, was this intended to kill people? Was it intended to make them lose consciousness? What are the permanent kind of repercussions, those kinds of things. So I actually think the email had a point in needing for us to clarify what we're talking about when we're referring to something like Joker Venom.
Well, the problem is there are different versions of it.
Right.
You can use it as a gas. You can use it as a liquid. Sometimes it's going to be injected. We'll get into that in a couple of few weeks. But that does happen. Sometimes it's meant to drive people insane. Sometimes it's actually meant to kill people. But what it all comes down to is it's all still Joker venom. It's all still Joker juice, perma-smile, Smilex.
Right. At the end of the day, it's some version of that.
It is some breakdown of that compound.
But I don't want to deter people. Like, if you have questions or you want to correct us, go for it. Send us an email.
Absolutely. Send us an email. You can find us at arkhamsessions@gmail.com, or you can send us an email through your website, underthemaskonline.com.
Look, I don't claim to know everything about comic books. I don't claim to know everything about Batman. And I certainly don't claim to know everything about psychology. So if folks want clarification or have questions or even have a correction, I welcome that kind of feedback. And I really hope that listener continues to listen to our episodes because, it sounds like they liked what they were listening to and just wanted to contribute something. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get into the episode.
I've got Batman in my basement.
Good to know. But could we get onto the episode?
Oh, right. We're talking about this episode.
Right. This episode, as Andrea mentioned, is called I've Got Batman in My Basement. It was written by Sam Graham and Chris Hubble, and it was directed by Frank Power. It was first aired on September 30th, 1992. We open up in Gotham City. It's nighttime. Shocker. And two not-so-bright thieves, Jay and Raven, one of which appears at times to be Ginger, shocker, are stealing the Von Alister Fabergé egg. At least they think they are, because Batman shows up to stop them. Only before he's attacked by a gigantic vulture, and the two thieves escape with the egg. We move on to Sherman and Roberta, two kids hanging out on Sherman's stoop, opening up his brand new Junior Detectives kit.
It's got a walkie-talkie wristband, a pen light, binoculars, even this cool badge.
And Sherman's a ginger.
This is true. The directors of Batman the Animated Series may have redeemed themselves with this one. Sherman is a ginger, albeit an extremely nerdy one. So we're still not past the point that a ginger could be anything other than a weakling. But, baby steps.
Yeah, I mean, he is essentially the lead in this particular episode.
That's true. When Sherman is on the stoop with Roberta, he is instantly picked on by two teen bullies, and you kind of get the sense that this is a pretty common occurrence for him.
Yeah, he doesn't seem too fazed that they're calling him names, calling him, Sherwood, Sherlock, and picking on him for what appears to be his nerdy interests in detective work.
For the record, I wouldn't mind being called Sherlock.
I think it's a compliment now. But,
yeah.
When you're, what would you say? He's probably 11 or 12 and getting picked on and, getting pushed around and being called Sherwood and Sherlock. Probably not the best.
Right. Yeah. Roberta, on the other hand, is I don't know, she seems a little unfazed. She's a bit of a tomboy. She hangs with Sherman. She likes to help him solve cases a la Encyclopedia Brown. She wears a ball cap.
Yeah, they seem like a couple of... They seem like very smart kids hanging out together. We do get the sense that they are... I don't want to call them outcasts, but we do get the sense that they have they have this geeky interest in detective stuff. And he gets this kit and he's like super geeking out over it because it's, you know, it comes with all these great gadgets and different activities. And it looks like he's getting picked on essentially because he is a nerd.
Right. And while the foursome are sitting there on the stoop and the two teens are bullying, for lack of a better word.
No, I would say that is accurate.
Yeah, they're bullying Sherman and Roberta. They end up seeing the same vulture that we saw Batman fighting with the night before. A gigantic vulture in Gotham City is a bit mysterious, so it prompts Sherman and Roberta to do a little investigating, which leads them to, I don't know, what looks like an abandoned warehouse filled with bags of birdseed.
You know, the typical warehouse thing.
Right. It's definitely got signs. It's a condemned building. No one's supposed to be in there. But we find the two thieves from the night before and the Penguin. Quack! He does kind of make that weird...
He calls out to his vulture pet.
Yes.
It's not a sound I expected coming out of the Penguin, but it's his way of communicating with his little pet.
That's true. It's our introduction to the Penguin, who okay, by the way, is voiced by Paul Williams. Paul's an interesting choice because, if you guys don't know, he's been an actor before, absolutely, but he's primarily known as a songwriter from the 70s. Mostly, this guy's famous for writing songs for himself. He's written songs for other groups. He wrote songs for the Carpenters. He wrote We've Only Just Begun.
Oh.
And he wrote and sang Just an Old-Fashioned Love Song. And he wrote, this is my favorite, Rainbow Connection from the Muppet Movie, as sung by Kermit the Frog.
Nice.
Just a little bit of cool trivia. I don't know. Maybe
That's
you guys...
interesting. Of course, we can't play any of that music because of copyright stuff.
Yeah, stuff like that. You know, so don't sing any of it.
I won't.
Yeah, but I don't know.
But people know. I mean, you say the Rainbow Connection. People know what
People
that is.
know the Rainbow Connection. I thought that was a cool bit of trivia. I don't know. Maybe you guys don't think so. I do. Sherman and Roberta catch a glimpse of the Fabergé egg from the night before, and Sherman instantly recognizes it. Roberta does not.
Don't you read the papers?
Do the comics count?
Wow, she's kind of a comics nerd, isn't she?
Geek girl.
Yeah.
Batman comes in, dumps birdseed on the Penguin and his men, gets the kids out of harm's way, and then gets knocked out by a gas pellet from the Penguin's umbrella. Drea, Batman is getting worse and worse about letting stuff like this happen.
What do you mean?
We're in episode 13. Mm-hmm. And so far we've seen him given a healthy dose of Scarecrow's fear toxin. We've seen him captured by a giant Venus flytrap and briefly succumbs to Poison Ivy's poison. We've seen him captured by gangsters after a burning building collapsed on top of him. Let's see. We've seen him hit upside the back of the head, giving him amnesia. He's been knocked out by the Joker's exploding gas playing card. He's been taken down and knocked unconscious by a kick from Two-Face, and which, by the way, that was probably especially embarrassing because he was woken up by a janitor. I would say at this point, no one makes a better case for Robin than Batman himself.
Well, that's not fair. I think we do have to see the hero fall once in a while. Why do we fall?
To get back up.
Exactly. I think the point, though, is he gets back up, right?
Right.
He doesn't let... These are minor setbacks and speed bumps.
But man, the mystery is fading.
I think that's the point, though. I mean, many people believe Batman, because he's fallible and because he's susceptible and vulnerable sometimes, that he's more relatable as a superhero. And then we're far more impressed with him when he's able to really defeat the villain and get the bad guy and do what he does best when he's, on 2 feet. So I like that about him.
I will give you that. Sherman and Roberta drive Batman away in the Batmobile.
Wait, what?
Yeah, this is where the writers really redeem themselves in my book, because the Ginger gets to steer the Batmobile. Roberta gets to punch the gas pedal, but he's a kid and he's too short to reach the pedals.
Of course.
But he does get to steer the Batmobile, and the next thing you know, Sherman's got Batman hidden away in his basement, or as he likes to call it, his crime lab. That's what I called my basement.
Oh.
No. And did you notice, Dre, there's a big poster of the Joker on the wall and everything. Like, this he has set up his crime lab.
Yeah, he's kind of like emulating Batman.
Yeah. It's not like a wanted poster though. Like, it's like a commercial, the Joker's
It's like
gone.
when we had posters of Tiffany on our wall.
Who's we?
Well, you.
I didn't. Well, yeah. There was the one poster of Tiffany
See,
I had on
I knew.
last week.
I know.
But in this crime lab, Batman's still under. He's not coming to, but the teens from earlier have discovered the Batmobile outside, and Sherman has to go defend it. Sort of.
You guys better leave that alone.
Oh, golly, we sure are scared, aren't we, Nicholas?
Oh, yes, Francis, we certainly are. Step aside, Shirley.
While out there, Scrap, the vulture, finds them and lures the Penguin to Sherman's house, where now Sherman, the teens, Roberta, and Batman are all down in the basement. Everybody but Batman is planning
Operation Foul Play.
which is essentially Home Alone, but using Batman's utility belt.
Yeah, the kid pulls the utility belt off of Batman's body and essentially takes all the different gadgets and uses them to fight the Penguin and the Penguin's 2 thugs.
Right. And most of the stuff works. I mean, they actually are able to take down the Penguin with a couple of bolos very briefly until Penguin cuts through it with his umbrella knife. And right before the Penguin can kill Batman, Batman wakes up because he's been given antitoxin and defeats the bad guys and saves the Fabergé egg. Penguin goes to jail. Vulture goes to the Gotham Zoo, and Sherman now leads his team of case solvers, which includes Roberta and the 2 former bully teens.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those TV tropes.
Interesting and unlikely is what I say.
But we certainly hope.
Yeah.
We hope it's possible.
Well, it's a good ending.
Yeah, it's a good ending. So let's talk a little bit about Sherman and that bullying that we see at the beginning. Bullying, especially recently, has become kind of a big deal, especially through social media, and the internet has really exposed this bullying for what it is. Let's talk a little bit about that impact on children and sort of how we can get beyond it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I totally agree with you that bullying and cyberbullying has become a really contentious issue and an important issue in the last couple of years. I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, but in, I would say 20 years ago, the bullying campaigns were very similar to kind of like the anti-drug ones. Like, well, obviously we're all against it, just don't do it. Just stay away from it kind of thing. And there's a lot of psychological and social psychological research now that shows that you can't just ignore it. You really do have to address it, whether you're a parent, a teacher, or that target, that victim being bullied. And so luckily nowadays there's a lot of research, literature, and resources for families and for kids to kind of help them identify real bullying and then try to intervene or try to problem solve around it. And it's also important to talk a little bit about the impact of bullying. As I said, now there's a lot of research and literature, especially lately, on the neuroscience of bullying. So we now know that bully victims experience anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, headaches, stomach aches, difficulty concentrating, and other psychological, physical, and attentional problems as a result of repeated bullying.
So you just said that bullying victims can actually suffer from PTSD. That's
absolutely
not something that people generally think of when they think, so bullying can actually lead a kid into the same sort of dysfunctional mindset that a soldier could get going to war.
Well, yes, in what we would consider the children's version of PTSD, which, is similar in terms of the presentation, except for, the types of memories they would have, the types of nightmares, the triggers, and so forth. So instead of having flashbacks about combat, they would have intrusive worries, thoughts, and flashbacks about the verbal, physical, and emotional, assaults that they're experiencing. So, of course, it depends on how severe the taunting and the physical assaults are on them, because let's face it, a lot of times bullying involves physical and sometimes sexual assault, right? So, yes, depending on the type of bullying that's experienced, one of the many responses could be post-traumatic stress symptoms.
Wow. It's important to note that kids can be going through the same thing that adults could be going through, who are going through so much more than most of us. So,
yeah, and further, there's actually evidence that being bullied leads to physical changes in the brain. So, for instance, we know from brain scan studies that children who are repeatedly victimized by peers actually show differences in their brain structure and functioning. So, what we see in those brain scans are differences in the actual structure of the brain as well as the neurochemistry of the brain. And what that results in are some psychosocial consequences, like the increase of sensitivity to future attacks and the likelihood, like an increased likelihood to perceive ambiguous situations as threatening. So let's say, for instance, a child has experienced verbal bullying and has been taunted about some aspect of themselves. Let's say, since we're talking about Sherman, who's quite nerdy, let's say that a youth has been bullied and pushed around because he likes comic books or something.
right.
If he has experienced enough repeated bullying around that, he may perceive ambiguous situations with peers as threatening to him. That could be something like hearing his peers laugh. Even if they're not laughing at him, he may interpret that as them laughing at him.
Oh, gotcha.
And then experience further emotional and psychological impact of an event that actually didn't really happen, given that perhaps that laughing was due to something else. So that's what I mean by being in what could be an ambiguous situation and interpreting that as being threatening to them. It's very possible to grow up and develop some of these social anxiety types of symptoms. And again, depending on your experiences, it can become a more serious problem.
So are some kids more likely than others to be bullied?
Unfortunately, yes.
Gingers.
Yeah, actually. Sometimes, this is actually something that's difficult to talk to kids about. Like, there are easier victims of bullying, and in the field of research and psychology, we would call them provocative targets or provocative victims. And usually these are kids whose social challenges make them an easy target for bullies and whose behavior sometimes makes it hard for adults to see that they're being victimized. Some examples are children with autism or Asperger's disorder.
Okay.
So, thinking about their inability to really catch social cues, some of their social skills deficits, and again, the lack of capacity to really understand how to socialize properly to avoid things like bullying from peers.
Right.
Other children who might be considered provocative targets are those with very limited or special interests, like hobbies. We can think about Sherman. He has this very kind of restricted interest in this detective stuff, or comic book fans or Harry Potter fans. Unfortunately, a lot of the geek fandom stuff, a lot of the nature and passion toward those things could be seen as very kind of limited, special interests in something. And if someone doesn't share that interest with you, they may target you, and you may get teased about it. As far as provocative targets, sometimes the things that we're bullied for are outside of our control. So these are things like, thinking about kids who are extremely tall, kids that hit puberty too late or too early, being obese, being an ethnic minority, or being a redhead. Those are also social challenges because, quite simply, they make that child different. And that's not something that the child can really change about themselves.
Right.
That's who they are. That's a characteristic that they have. And so that's what we mean by, some children are easily victimized or considered provocative targets.
So I find it interesting that in this episode, it's brought up a couple of times that Sherman is from a single-parent household. He makes a comment about,
You're safe here. It's just Mom and me.
And at the end of the episode, Sherman tries to even hook Batman up with his mother.
Say, Batman, you wouldn't be single, would you?
So they make it a point that Sherman is from a single-parent family. I find that interesting. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think they really wanted us to know that little bright, imaginative Sherman is part of a family of two. And he even says, it's just me and my mom when he takes Batman to his basement. And I think, I look at it like another strength of this episode, that the writers are including diversity in the way that they're showing different families and the way that kids are being portrayed. And, maybe back in the early mid-90s, there were children who were experiencing single-parent households and saw that and could relate to it and felt included in some way. Because as you know, we grew up during a time where a two-parent, a male-female two-parent household was the norm and was constantly portrayed in the media. So I really
see the nuclear family.
Yeah, and I see this as a strength. I didn't see anything negative about it. I thought that it was certainly something that made the episode better.
So any other thoughts or tidbits from this particular episode?
I actually think this episode stands out from others because now, I don't know if you'll agree with me, and you might laugh at this, but my theory about this episode is that it's not real.
And what do you mean by not real?
I actually think that this episode is coming out of Sherman's imagination, that the entirety of this episode is Sherman's fantasy about what might happen if he were to have some of his inner wishes fulfilled. So
why? But what about this episode suggests that it didn't happen?
From beginning to end, it looks to me like the success story of little Sherman.
Sherman is a Marty Stew.
Sherman could be a Marty Stew. Well, thinking about like from the very beginning, he's being bullied, but then he's portrayed as being super smart. He
can handle the bullying. He's sort of like, leave me alone.
He drives the Batmobile. And not only that, but he
steers the Batmobile.
He steers the Batmobile. But all these things about the episode, the ease in which he takes the Penguin down in his home, the way Batman doesn't even wake up until the end of the episode at the very last minute, the bullies aligning with Sherman toward the end and like joining his his team of detectives, and then at the end Sherman trying to set Batman up with his mother. So I see this as all of his psychological wishes and needs being fulfilled. He has success with his peers. He has friendships. He has validation of his interest in detective work. He has a father figure in his family, which is Batman. So I don't know. It's just my theory that this is Sherman's story. This is his fantasy, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know that there's anything wrong with that idea. That this episode is kind of like a dream.
So now I'm fascinated by the idea. For starters, this episode just got a lot deeper than we thought it was. But secondly, I'm fascinated by the idea of now looking at every episode from the perspective of whose fantasy is this? That
totally.
Batman doesn't exist in this world, or at least he's not as prominent as we think he is. It's just every single sub-character has some kind of fantasy about him.
Right.
Yeah.
And really, are gingers really all that successful?
No. So
In this world, in the Gotham, in the animated series world, this is a ginger being pro-social, successful, having strong peer relationships.
But still having self-hatred in that, even in his own fantasy, he couldn't take the Penguin down on his own. The Penguin still got out and still nearly saved the day, still nearly saved Batman. Batman, even in this kid's fantasy, had to wake up and save himself.
Yeah. Well, again, it's a fantasy that
Right.
Still glorifies and idealizes Batman.
Right. Okay. That's interesting.
Go with it.
I am going. I am going. So normally I like to bring up real people and real life situations to help ground the show a little bit. Not really a whole lot that we can talk about here, except that it actually turns out, Drea, that Fabergé eggs are not so uncommon a target for thieves.
Okay.
In fact, you can find quite a few news stories just by Googling them of eggs having been stolen and or found. Just last year, an egg that had been stolen in 2009 from a Kuwait import-export firm was recovered. That egg, can you believe it or not, valued at $1.3 million. So,
wow.
Yeah, so there's that.
Who would have thought?
Fabergé eggs, actually kind of popular. In fact, in another story that I read, a jewel thief actually robbed a jewelry store, ended up actually killing the jewelry store clerk. But the one thing that the robber didn't think he needed or couldn't carry or whatever, tossed aside a box inside $1,000 Fabergé egg. So turns out these things, often get robbed and sometimes not even appreciated for what they are. So
that's why the Penguin was seeking this egg. It was just valued at a very high,
Penguin wanted it.
amount.
Yeah. I mean, it was such an important Fabergé egg that it had a name. The Von Ulster Fabergé egg.
I wonder what the egg represents to Sherman.
I know.
If again,
something pretty, something jewelly, something sparkly.
Yeah, if this is indeed his fantasy.
Brown hair.
What? Han Solo hair?
Yeah, he just
Indiana Jones hair.
Just wants to be normal like everybody else. Just wants to I know.
What did you like the ending to this episode? Was it fulfilling to you?
I would like to see, and I don't think we will, but I would like to see Sherman become part of the Bat family. I'd like him to, when Batman needs a kid to get into some, let's say Batman needed a kid to infiltrate the Underdwellers and the Sewer King. Could have used Sherman. Sherman could have been a new Underdweller. Could have been one of those little sewer rats.
I don't think he would have survived that.
Well, he may not have, but sometimes you take the risks. When
True.
you're a general, you send them out there thinking they might not come back, but
this again taking it to a dark, dark place.
Hey, you told me gingers could get PTSD. And by gingers, I mean anyone who was bullied as a kid.
Yeah.
No.
Speaking of which, if you wanted to learn more about bullying, including the identification and interventions and strategies to overcome bullying, check out Carrie Goldman's book, Bullied, What Every Parent, Teacher, and Kid Needs to Know About Ending the Cycle of Fear. It's a book that I have that I've been reading. It's really in-depth and research-based. It's fantastic.
Carrie Goldman is the mother of the Star Wars girl?
Yes. She's the mother of Katie, who's the Star Wars girl that was bullied for carrying a Star Wars water bottle and being targeted because she's a girl.
Yeah.
And so, her
became
story
a really big social media cause.
Absolutely. An anthem for geek girls, actually. So
cool.
Her story is in the book. Again, I highly recommend it. A lot of interesting and usable facts and literature that tell us a lot about bullying, and again, how to strategize with teachers and parents and with kids on how to overcome this. In addition, you can look up the Anti-Defamation League online, a lot of resources there as well. And of course, any questions you cannot get answers to, try to email us. We can certainly try to help.
Yeah. And again, you can find us at Arkham Sessions on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. We're the Arkham Sessions there. Find us, like us. You can also email us, arkhamsessions@gmail.com, or go to Drea's website, underthemaskonline.com, and email her there. I'm bward028.
I'm at Arkham Asylum Doc.
And that's how you can reach us. Great. So that wraps up episode 13, and frankly, I'm happy. Not because this was a bad episode, but because it finally brings us to another one that you and I absolutely cannot wait for.
Brr, it's getting cold in here.
There must be some toros in the atmosphere. Heart of Ice next week. Guys, this one is huge. It literally defined a major villain for Batman in all mediums going forward. So be sure to tune in next week for that.
It's the tragic and very interesting story of Mr. Freeze.
Oh my God. If you are looking for psychology and Batman put together, you need to come back.
This story is essential.
Come back for this story. That's next week. Till then, I'm Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And you've been listening to
The Arkham Sessions.